Hey everyone, so great to have you here today. Looking forward, so forward to having this discussion with Medina. Um, we're just waiting for her to pop online, but in the meantime, I'd love to know where you are and where you're coming from. Hey Billy, so good to see you here. Thanks for joining us this morning. It's going to be quite an interesting conversation, this, because yeah, I know that when Mendina and I jump online or when we have discussions, we call them solving the world's issues, solving the world's problems. And yeah, it can definitely, we can definitely be get caught up in our own sort of getting lost with saving the world and making the world a better place. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to having this discussion with Medina this morning. Gosh, we have such a long history. We started being friends. Hey Medina, so good to see you. I was just welcoming everybody and telling everybody that you and I, when we get together, sometimes we can the conversations that we have, because our conversations can be really about saving the world and making the world a much better place. Hey.
Hello, Pauli.
How are you?
I am fabulous. How are you?
I am wonderful, thank you. I was just saying that you and I have such a long history, going back to, I think it was around 2006 when we first met.
I can't even remember. I feel like I've known you forever.
It does feel like forever, but that's because we've shared so much. But I think it was around 2006 that we met. I was actually a client of yours. And you were my supplier back in the days when I was in corporate and my previous lifetime, as I like to call it. And that's where it all started for us.
Yeah, I actually even get a bit emotional just thinking of the depth of the friendship. You know, how it went from client to just the journey that we've both been on to find ourselves where we're at now. And now connecting, I mean, live and technology, it's just crazy.
Absolutely. But this is how the world changes and the world evolves, and how friendships and that evolve, you know, going from customer and supplier or vendor to being what, well, I'm going to just call it lifelong friends, because that's what it is. It's been a lifetime, and I know we've got lots more lifetimes together, just by some of the conversations we've had and the adventures that we're looking at having, starting off, you know, in early next year, New Year. So yeah, maybe let's just kick off. I see we've got quite a few people online. A few people are waving hello. So awesome to see you. Billy, Debbie, I see Zizo, a couple of others. Bron, so awesome to have you here. Mads, why don't you just kick off a bit and just a bit of background on who you are, what you do, and where are you at in life now?
Okay, sure. Life is a journey, but let me just try and put it in a nutshell, you know, just a few pointers. So my background is marketing. That's why I ended up connecting with you, Paulie. At the given time, it was a company called Music Marketing International that I was currently a partner in. Oh, sorry, that I was a partner in at the time, coming from an ad agency and working on the Vodacom account. So that's really my background. And after Music Marketing International, birthed a company called Dandelion Breeze. And it was all about empowerment and making a difference. If you look at a dandelion and you blow it, it sows the seed of sustenance. And that's where I tapped into so many young entrepreneurs and young people building businesses and grew from there. And I think when lockdown came, it was something that was sitting within my heart and soul for the longest time. And that was the Bold Woman campaign that I'm currently running. And that's how women have so many different spaces. And, you know, the roles that we play in life are so vast and huge and intense. And the Bold Woman is really my major thing at the moment that I am passionate about, and it's sharing your truth and allowing your voice to be heard, and just being the true version of who you are. And it's a space where we connect, women connect, and we have real live, courageous conversations like you and I are going to have now this morning, so that it can touch others. And I just believe that I'm just an entrepreneur, self-made businesswoman with God's favor. I'm on fire for Christ and just want to connect with others and pay forward.
That's awesome. And you certainly have done that over the years that I've known you. First of all, sharing the same or similar background, because I was also in marketing in my previous lifetime before I stepped out of corporate to work on my passion, which is helping people and how to create healthy relationships at home and in the workplace. So working with individuals in their personal capacity, obviously running the Mancave program and the Womenology program, which are both personal growth and development programs for men and women. And then in the workplace or the corporate space, doing things which is, well, it's often referred to as soft skills training. I like to call it human skills training, because it's all of those skills that make us human. Things like, conflict management, communication, creating emotional, psychological safety, conflict management skills, all of those things, and behavioral profiling and assessments too. So let's kick off with let's kick off with conflict resolution, because I know you and I often talk about this when we have our long Saturday or Sunday afternoon conversations that can go on forever. But I know you've experienced conflict in the workplace throughout your career, and you've also experienced it in your personal space as well, just as I have. So what would be some of the sort of healthy ways that you would say to resolve conflict?
I think, you spoke about self-development. And when you look at conflict, regardless of what forms of life, you are going to come across conflict. And what I've learned over the years, Paula, is really to develop self first. Because if you're not equipped, you're not in a position to firstly help yourself and secondly help anybody else. And if I look at characters, we all have such different characters. So it's firstly for me is to identify, who am I? What are the things that resonate with me? What are my values? What is it that I want in life? What is the end result that I want to achieve? And in order to achieve that result, what do I need to do to get there? Am I connecting rather than correcting? Am I being kind rather than being right? It depends, and we're all at different phases, and it's accepting the phase that you're at and having the coping mechanisms and the tools to help you to resolve that conflict. Now, for the longest time in my life, I think that I wasn't aware of who I was. And because I didn't know who I was and what I wanted, I just attached myself to what society thought. And depending on what society thought of me, that's how I reacted. So I was reacting more than anything else, and not really digging deep down and blaming. There was so much blame, so over the years, what I've learned to do is to actually know myself better, to build myself to be a better person so that I end up getting the result that I'm looking for when it comes to conflict. Because truth be told, none of us enjoy conflict, but it's something that we have to face, right? We have to face it. So I just look at what's the end result and I apply myself according to what I'd like to see that be.
And you're absolutely right. Nobody likes conflict. It's awkward. It's uncomfortable. It's hurtful. It's painful. It's all of those things. And that's why I ended up writing my first book, which was called Embracing Conflict, because through my own personal journey of learning how to deal with conflict, and as you say, learning about self, learning about what is my conflict management style. Am I the kind of person that avoids conflict and shuts down and withdraws from the person and the situation? Or am I the kind of person that comes out attacking to defend myself, and both of them are defensive, protective mechanisms that we implement when it comes to conflict and confrontational situations. But I think also people have made conflict out to be this huge big thing where it's toxic and ugly and volatile, and it's not even, I mean, it is that, but it's as simple as you and I disagreeing about something because we have different views, different opinions, different upbringings, different belief systems, and that in itself can cause huge conflict. So what would you suggest around, just at a basic level, dealing with you and I don't agree on something? How do we get around that?
Okay, so that's a courageous conversation. Exactly like we said, that's a courageous conversation and not being fearful. Because as we talk about fear, and that's another conversation altogether, which is false evidence appearing real, but so many of us are fearful. So I spoke about myself. I was always fearful of how I would leave you feeling. So the way I would approach you was not with the truth of what I was actually experiencing at that given time, but how would you react to what I was going to say? So I would almost like pussyfoot around you, creating in my head what I think Paula would want to hear from me. But it's taken a lot for me to dig deep down inside and be firstly truthful to myself. But the way I would approach you is with my truth. So I would, like, say it was between you and I, and I'm talking about somebody close, say a family member or an intimate relationship or a business relationship. I would drop a note to firstly find out, when do you have the time to spend with me? Because sometimes we just approach people and they're not in the right headspace. They can't sit down. So I'll almost like make an appointment with you. So I would schedule time to sit with you, and I would remove the emotion. I will not have a courageous conversation when I'm feeling emotional. Because as you would know, Paula, being the relationship expert, you cannot resolve anything at the level that it was created at. And if I'm feeling emotional, how am I going to speak to you in that state? So I would sit on it. I also go to a higher power. So I will get on my knees and I pray. I will always ask God to give me the direction on where I need to be, how I need to be, and remove the ego. Because the ego, again, is another big thing, and I would set a time with you. I will share my truth, and I would detach myself from the outcome, because Paulie also has her truth. So you share with me what your truth is and how you live feeling. I will share with you how I'm left feeling, and let's agree to disagree, and respect one another. I think that's the most important thing. We need to respect each other. And once we respect each other, we choose. There's some things about you that I love. There's some things about you that I don't really like. But how important are you to me? Is this relationship something that I want to maintain and keep? And what effort am I going to put into it? And if it's something I don't really want to keep because it doesn't serve me well, then I'm going to let go of it with love and pray for you from a distance. So that's the way I would handle it.
Yeah. And it's, I always say with the work that I do, you don't wake up in the morning and go, today I'm going to fight with you and make your day a living hell. We wake up with the best intentions, but then life happens. Something happens where something is said or not said, done or not done. And that's what causes the conflict, which is the miscommunication, the misunderstanding, the misinterpretation, the trigger words, all of those things. But sometimes that other person is not on the same conscious level as you. They may not be able to go within themselves and regulate their own emotions to be able to have that courageous conversation. How would you approach something like that?
Well, I'm going to quote John Maxwell there. And I love him and I follow him. And he's just one of my gurus that I admire. And he says, a true leader goes to where the people are at. So I'm not going to expect you to come to where I'm at, because I'm on this, and I'm not saying I'm superior. Nobody is, I'm busy growing consciously and learning every day. But I'm going to say, where are you at? And if I truly want to resolve this, I'm going to go to where you at. And I'm going to share my truth, allow you to share your truth. And it's all about how I leave you feeling. And some things can't be resolved overnight. Some things have to be left where they're at, and you walk away from it. Stop analyzing everything and don't always want a result from stuff.
Yeah.
Because it's all about God's timing in my eyes.
And I think also there are some things that you are just never going to agree on. So how do you agree to disagree respectfully and go, well, that's your view and I respect that for you and that's where you're at and this is my view, but that doesn't make us bad people or that we can't be friends anymore. It's about how do you hold the space for two truths at the same time?
And that's why we're still friends today. Because we're able to hold that. We're able to see each other for where we're at. We're hungry for growth. We're hungry to make a difference, in people's lives. And when values are aligned and we both want a similar outcome, it won't always be the same. Then voila, you get what we have. Years of greatness.
Definitely, definitely. And another thing that comes up, you spoke about fear earlier, but another thing that comes up, particularly us being self-employed and solopreneurs or entrepreneurs, women in biz, whatever you want to call us, okay? But when it comes to money and finances, and especially being your own businesswoman or your own boss lady, we know that there's ups and downs when it comes to money. Some months are lean months, other months are great months. But money and relationships is a big thing. And I know in working with couples particularly, money is one of the top 5 things that couples argue over and often end up getting divorced over or breaking up over. So nowadays, modern women, much more independent, earning their own money, making their own way, don't necessarily need a man so much anymore. That old stereotyping of the man as the breadwinner and the protector and the provider. But that's changed and that's shifted. Some tips on how to deal with money and money issues when it comes to relationships where either your partner is earning less than you and you are the breadwinner as the woman, so to speak. That dynamic can also cause conflict. Some tips there.
But you touched a real point here. I think, and again, I'm only going to speak from me. I'm not saying whether it's right or wrong, but I'm saying this is how I've had to handle stuff. My childhood played a huge part when it came to this because I grew up saying, no man's going to tell me what to do, where to do it, how to do it. So I always get this word wrong. Testosterone. I always say, I've got so much of that within me that sometimes I even think I'm a man, think like a man, act like a woman. So I've always been hungry to achieve. And as I have grown, I've gone through phases where I've been so fearful because I haven't known where the next cent was going to come from. And this is where my faith has kicked in so strongly because I know that when God has a plan for you, you just have to surrender, and the same saying like Bishop T.D. Jakes says, you can pray, but kneeling down on the side of your bed is not going to put bread on the table. So yes, as much as you pray, you've still got to get up and you've got to do something. So I've always been an achiever. I've always been hungry to see a brighter future. I've always wanted more for my daughter. And I have gone out there and nothing was too much. So I'm a planner. So I will plan every day. Even if I have nothing for the week, I will plot and I will put things in place and I will create and I will put out the right intention. So as fearful as I may have been, it's, like Susan Jeffrey says in her book, feel the fear and do it anyway. So I would always be doing something because fear can paralyze you. And that's what it does. So you have a choice. Am I going to allow it to paralyze me, or am I going to get up and create something? And ultimately, by putting out the right intention, the right thing is going to come my way. And God's favor and God's grace, I have stepped into it day by day. And there's times where I would say I've been so fearful and almost to the point of paralyzed that I even didn't want to get up. I have been on medication. I have been to psychiatrists, psychologists, counselors, had life coaches. And we all go through that kind of stuff, you know, and those were the learnings. So over the years, I have allowed myself to grow from it, you know, taking what has worked for me, what hasn't worked for me. Fear doesn't help me or benefit me in any way, but sometimes you can have a little bit of fear, but positive fear that actually drives you rather than paralyzes you. And I think I've always had that attitude. I've always had the attitude to achieve. So I've achieved in life. I put the intention out, and slowly but surely, I mean, being in my 50s now, I can look back and I can say that hard work has truly paid off. And I've gone through the waves, you know, but I've learned to surf well. Let me put it that way. You know, I've crashed occasionally and I've been wobbling sometimes, but I'm really just surfing the waves and embracing. So yes, from a partnership perspective, I've got into spaces where I'm earning more or I have achieved more. And there was a space in my life where I actually looked down, because my understanding and coming from childhood was that a man needs to provide, a man needs to be a certain figure in my life. But that's not necessarily true. You know, it comes back to your upbringing and what your belief system is and how indoctrinated you were, or what your first impression of man is and a man's role in your life. But every relationship, you can discuss what you want your relationship to be. And you can work from that. You know, it's almost like an agreement. So it's been a learning process for me, where I have blamed, I have shamed, I have lack of self-confidence, and I have disabled, I've enabled, you know, I've done so many things in my relationships to get to a point where I'm finally saying to myself, this is who you are. And you can't expect others to be like you. So if your financial situation is here, what do you want from a relationship? Do you want somebody to add to you financially? What are your key pointers that you actually are wanting? And where I'm currently at, as long as you are financially independent, and you've got to look within yourself. So from a male perspective, what makes you financially independent? If you're not dependent on me and we can meet in the yoke and contribute positively to each other, I think that's great, because as the word says, you can't give from an empty cup. You can give from the overflow. So for me in a relationship, you must be independent, I must be independent, and we must contribute to one another. I don't believe that another male, or especially my intimate partner, should be totally dependent on me. That doesn't serve me. And in other relationships, that may work for somebody else, but it doesn't work for me. So I don't know if I really answered that question, or I went roundabout, or I shared a few things about it.
So you did, and you just you raised some key things. So one is, first of all, understanding how your upbringing contributes to your views on life in terms of the stereotyping from a gender perspective and the expectations from a gender role. So I had a similar upbringing where I had to grow up very independently. I lost my mother when I was 7 years old. I didn't have a mother figure to guide me. My father wasn't really that actively involved in raising children, because he came from that background that, you know, it was a woman's job to raise the children, and it was his job to go out and provide and protect and bring the money home. And so that I carried with me into my life and my adulthood and relationships, in terms of being very independent, just like you, and taking care of myself. And part of my journey that I had to learn was how to become dependent on a partner, not necessarily financially. Financially was one of those things, but it was also at an emotional level as well, being able to share that space with someone, because I was so used to taking care of myself and being so independent. And that can cause conflict itself when it comes to relationships, you know, especially from a male perspective, in terms of, where do they fit in? What is their role? What is their purpose? Because yes, money is only one way that we contribute when it comes to a relationship. There's 5 different pillars that we contribute through when it comes to relationships. There's the functional, the emotional, the physical, the financial, and the spiritual pillars. And helping people or couples to understand those differences, because we so quickly resort to money as the way we contribute because it's something tangible. We can measure it by how much we do or don't have in the bank account, right? And we know when there isn't any in the bank account, that is added stress, which can also contribute to conflict and confrontation between couples. But I think also being able to have those courageous conversations very early on in your relationship, but then constantly checking in with each other as you evolve through life and life stages, because your outlooks and your priorities in life change. So for example, one of you gets a promotion and you get a nice salary increase or a bonus, or heaven forbid, one of you gets retrenched and now you're on 1 salary versus 2 incomes, and having to have those courageous conversations. And again, we don't like talking about money because it's not a sexy topic when it comes to relationships. It's awkward, it's uncomfortable. We're taught to don't tell anybody what you're earning or what your salary is. Nobody should know, those kind of things. And I'm surprised with some of the couples that I work with that they don't know what each other's financial situation or position is because they don't talk about this.
That's crazy.
Absolutely. And so I think it's about finding that middle ground where we can create a safe space, where we can start even with the basics. This is the household budget. This is what it costs us to run this household. Think of your household as a business, because indirectly it is. The 2 of you working together you're a team, you're team players. And so sitting down and even just looking at the basics of this is our household budget. And this is what it costs us to run our business, which is our home and our home environment. And how can we contribute relative to what our earning or our income is? So it's unfair to expect you to, if you're earning 100,000 Rand and your partner is earning 50,000 Rand a month, that you must now contribute equally to the costs, because you can't. It's unrealistic. And that in itself is going to cause resentment, because the one partner that's always paying because they've got more and the other one that's got less is always going to feel, under pressure or stress that they're not meeting their expectation to contribute to the relationship. So I think also we place unrealistic expectations on each other in a relationship as well when it comes to money and finances and those kinds of conversations.
But I think that it was a huge lesson for me, because I think I placed a lot of emphasis on the financial for the longest time. But as I started growing consciously, I realized there was so much more. Because one of my key pointers, or like when you talk about pillars, is family. I mean, I love my family, and to have someone in a relationship with me that can love my aging parents, that can love my daughter, that can love my granddaughter, that can love the people that I love, my extended daughters, that kind of stuff. That for me, it took me a long while to realize, just like what you're saying, it's not the contribution of finance. There's a contribution of so much more that money can't buy. That how do you place a value on certain things? And I think we go through life. We get to different phases of our life where we need to embrace the current of where we're at. There's a time where you're hungry and you're racing and you need to build a foundation and you need the home and you need the car and you need all kinds of things, and there's bills to be paid. And you've got school fees to pay. You've got university fees to pay. You've got so many expenses. And then you get to the point where I'm at now and you say, okay, so run, being off this treadmill, and I've fallen off it so many times, hit my face flat. So where are you now? How are you going to embrace where you're at and look at what are the important things in life? It's no longer, finances, like you say, is just one thing. But how can we get to an agreement where you build your business, which is your relationship business, as into what are the requirements? And a lot of young people, exactly like you're saying, don't even start there. They don't start with that, and they don't invest in self-development. Especially if I can share openly with people of color. They don't invest in self. They just hungry, running around, doing things for everybody else, achieving fanciness. But you don't realize that if you don't develop yourself, you have no use to anybody else. You've got to self-invest. And this is where the bold woman has come in. And it's a platform whereby you can just share your truth. That's all you do is share your truth, and it allows you, I hold people's hands because the truth is all within you. But just to get across to the other side of the bridge, and especially when as a woman, one has gone through so many of those pain points that we're actually speaking about. You spoke about childhood, childhood rejection, childhood abuse. There's so many different things. I wouldn't even know where to start. Divorce, extramarital affairs, so many different things. And as a relationship coach, you can tap in on all those things. And that's why you and I have had the conversation on so many different things. And that pain is so intense when you don't even know who you are and you're operating from that space of fear.
I just want to check in with the people that are online that are listening in. If you've got any questions for us, if you just want to pop it on the chat box, and we will get to them, or we will answer them. We'd love to hear from you, of course. Join in on this conversation. Maddie, you've actually touched on the next point that I wanted to talk about, which is trauma. Now, everybody has a story. You and I, we've spoken about this so many times, that we all have a story. Yeah. And I think depending on where you're at in your healing journey or your spiritual journey or whatever it might be, but about dealing with it, processing those traumas, that doesn't mean that the trauma doesn't go away. It's still there. I just think perhaps the emotional charge that it has just gets lesser and lesser, or has less impact. But we all go through trauma, and trauma can play such a big role in our lives, personally and professionally as well. You've been on your own sort of healing journey, just like I have. So what would you suggest to someone who's potentially isn't ready yet to start facing their trauma and that healing journey?
It's so deep, Paula, that sometimes the walls you build are so high that you yourself cannot get over those walls. And I think that's where I found myself. The walls were so high that I didn't even really know who I am. And so many of the decisions that I made going through life, even though I was falling forward and I was achieving, because I'm definitely a great achiever, they were all built from fear. And that's because I wasn't able to face the traumatic things that I went through in life. I would say, and I use the saying all the time, how do we eat an elephant? And that's bite-sized chunks. Because if you look at the elephant, it's huge. And sorry to animal lovers, I don't literally mean it in the sense of eating the elephant, but it's just the phrase that I use, I think I started a little by little, step by step every day, because I wanted change. I was tired of going through this space of unhappiness. What I put out, my intention, my aura, my vibration, if that's not correct, then you're not going to receive what it is that you want. And we're all aiming for abundance, and we all, like you say, have a story to tell, and we're on this path of growth. So I would plan, I'm a planner, and I would look out there and I would say, where do I want to be? What do I want to achieve? How do I see my life? What waters me? What drains me and dries me up? And really look within. And that's what I've been doing for the longest period of time. And just really living the best that I can, and it hasn't always been right. And I haven't always done right by people. But when I know better and learn better, only then can I do better. So my advice is, every day I look at myself and I say, where do I want to be tomorrow? And what do I need to do today to get to where I want to be tomorrow? And this is how I've had to deal with yesterday. And like they say, you don't camp at the cemetery, you visit. If you're going to camp there, it's going to be awful. So you don't camp there and build your house, but you have to review. You have to go back to say, what didn't work for me? And I look at those things on a daily basis and I say, what can I make better? And I go back and I look at my childhood trauma. I look at the fear that I went through as a child. I mean, I grew up like you did. I mean, my father is a phenomenal human being, but my father raised me military style. This is how it had to be. A child had to be seen and not heard. So I didn't know how to share my voice because I'm so used to holding it on the inside, and that's where the conflict would come because I behave in a certain manner that I shouldn't be. So I'm now dealing with that, and I'm sharing my truth on a daily basis, but with love. I'm dealing with those trigger points of what set me up. If, for instance, a partner was concerned and showed concern, I saw it as jealousy. I thought, you're so envious and you're keeping me up and you're following up and you want to know what I'm doing and where I'm at, not realizing that someone is showing me love. Because I didn't love myself, I didn't know how to receive that love. And this is why I can see it in others, and this is why the bold woman helps as well to say, sometimes people just want to love you, but if you don't love yourself, how are you going to receive love? And there's so many different spaces, a space of entitlement. Because I so wanted to be part of and wanted to be received, I would almost be entitled. It was my way or no way. And life doesn't work like that. That causes conflict again. But that also stemmed from traumatic spaces. I never wanted to find myself in a space of need because of the rejection that I felt. But you have to work through it. You have to understand what those trigger points are. You have to connect with people like myself and people like you that are here to help, that want to pay forward, that have different programs. There's a space for everybody. Like when I speak, I say, there's a space for life coaching. There's a space for psychologists. There's a space for psychiatrists. There's a space for counselors. There's a space for the bold woman. And we're all here to help one another become better versions of ourselves. So it's every day, just absorb, receive, learn, align yourself with people that you want to grow or aspire to be like. You need to be a tadpole sometimes in a big sea. You can't always be the big fish that knows everything. And that's why even like with the two of us, we also aspire to be with others that we can grow, learn, and absorb from. We learn every day, and you fix every day, and just to be open and conscious.
Absolutely. And I think it's definitely having that open mindset in terms of being open and willing to learn about self, to be willing to learn about the other person or persons and the space in between the situation, because every day is an opportunity to learn. You were talking about learning to receive, and that was something that I struggled with for many years because of my upbringing as well, and also not having a voice that resulted in some of my traumatic experiences growing up, being sexually abused as a child, experiencing sexual harassment in the workplace, and that's why I'm such a passionate advocate for gender-based violence and doing quite a bit of work in that space now because it's the 16 days of activism. But it's also around understanding what that trauma has contributed to you not being able to receive and not being able to give, or giving with expectation. So we give, but we expect something in return, and only by doing that work and doing that healing journey and understanding where that source comes from or that trigger of that trauma, can you then start becoming whole again. Often when I work with couples, or when I do the Mancave program or the Womenology program, and one of the modules that we do is around personal relationships. And we actually unpack how your upbringing has shaped and influenced who you have become and how that's now playing out in your adult relationship. And that childhood wounding is a trigger for each other that results in that protective, defensive behavior, attacking or withdrawing when it comes to relationships. And how, because we maybe didn't have a voice growing up because of the environment, where we don't learn to ask for our needs to be met. And someone sent me a brilliant quote the other day. It's become my new saying, is that You can't get mad at your partner for not meeting a need that you have not asked for. That's the same as being mad at a waiter, which I thought was brilliant, because how can you be mad at a waiter that he hasn't brought you food that you haven't ordered off the menu yet? You know? And so I see we have a question here, and the question is, when is it the best time to talk money? During the dating phase or when he has proposed marriage? What would you say?
Oh, I would say not during the dating phase. I would not go to once marriage is proposed, because for me, I feel that you've already walked half the journey. You know, you're agreeing to get to another point. I think those are the things that should come up in the early stages. But again, there's no right and wrong. What works for you? That's what I would do. I would get it out the way. Now that I know better, I'd want to do better, because I haven't got time to waste. Really, I haven't.
Yeah.
So I think
And
it depends on your own journey and where you're at.
And I think it also, absolutely, if you haven't done that work for yourself first, it's going to be very difficult for you to have those kind of conversations with your partner very early on in the relationship. We often think of the, especially the honeymoon romantic phase, when we first meet someone, we fall in love and they're the best thing since sliced bread and we love everything about them. We can't wait to be with them and we do all of those things for them. And then when we start shifting into that next phase of the relationship cycle that every couple goes through, that power struggle phase, and that's where all of these little things start cropping up, the red flags that were there, but we chose to ignore them, or we justified them for whatever reasons. We made excuses for them. And now they really start to come play when it comes to our relationship space. But I know that we've only got a few minutes left. So I'm just checking again if anybody has any other questions that they would like to ask us before we, someone's asking about love languages. How do we, we can't show love based on our love languages. We need to tap into our partner's love language so that we are speaking to their need. Absolutely, yes. So I think maybe we could end off with that sort of topic around the red flags that we started talking about, in terms of how do you ask to have your needs met from your partner without creating an expectation or setting them up for failure. Because often we have this expectation we create in our minds. We don't necessarily articulate it and share it with our partner. When they don't meet that expectation, we feel let down and disappointed, but it was us that set them up for failure in the first place. So some tips and thoughts around that.
Okay, I don't know if you can hear me clearly, but I feel like our conversation it's sort of cutting and coming. But anyway, look, for me, I think so many of us live in a fantasy. We live in the fantasy of what we would like the relationship to be, rather than what the relationship actually is. And I think when you face those real truths of what is the relationship actually, and you deal with real stuff, you need to look at what pleases you. What is it that you want? What is your love language? And if I give you an example, for me, it's about service. If you, if you are doing things for me, in my mind, you love me, because you are doing acts of affirmation, that kind of thing. And yet, I've been in relationships where some partners, for instance, want love and touch and feel. And that's where a lot of conflict comes in. So, yes, I don't think that you can expect always a partner to give you everything that you want without asking, without putting it forward to say, these are the things that leave me feeling good. Because if you don't ask, you won't receive. And often I'll say, I'm not a sangoma, I'm not a psychiatrist. I can't see into the future. If you don't tell me, I don't know. But it took a long time for me to get there, because a lot of what I did was being a people's pleaser. I did things because the lack of self-love and self-worth was so low that I needed to be loved and I needed to be wanted. So that's why I was a giver. And it was very hard for me to receive, because I thought I had to keep giving you in order for you to love me, because I'm a doer. And you have to step back. You have to understand what is your love language. What is your partner's love language? And you need to ask for what you want. And you need to share with your partner that they also need to ask you for what they want. And that's why it's a relationship. It's a relay. It's passing the baton to and forth and, give and take. And how do you work at this relationship to get the best result out? And you've got to see that 80-20 works. Is it watering you or is it not? And some relationships, you are both wonderful human beings. They just don't work, because your values aren't aligned. And that's where the courage needs to come in. And I think you and I can both share that. We've been courageous enough to even walk away from relationships that don't serve us. It doesn't make the other person a bad person. And it still makes us the authority in the spaces that we're in, because we are honest enough and true to ourselves to stand up and face, the reality of where we're at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Correct.
And I think, just to end off with there's 3 little questions that you can share with your partner to create that safe space where you can ask for what you need. The first one is, what's working well in our relationship? Because we often focus on what's not working well. We very seldom look at what is working well in our relationship. We're very quick to criticize or fault find what our partner's not doing. So the first question is, what's working well in our relationship, and how do we keep doing more of that? Right. The second question is, what areas or what can we improve on? Now that's very different to asking what's not working in our relationship. Because when we ask that question, Pandora's box can be opened, and we're very quick to then go into defensive mode or fault finding or criticism mode. So very important, not what you say, how you say it, is what areas can be improved on, or where can we enhance our relationship? And then the third question, which we never ask, is, how can I be a better partner for you? We don't ask our partners that. And I think if you just apply those 3 little tips, those 3 little sentences or questions as regularly throughout your relationship, check in with each other, whether it's on date night or whether it's once a quarter or whatever it is. But those 3 simple little questions will keep you focused and aligned in your relationship, but also create that safe space to be able to have those courageous conversations and resolve conflict as well.
And I think just to remain true to yourself, if things are not working, accept it. Accept what is. You can't force something that's not. Passion, there's some things that can't be bought and can't be discussed. It's either there or it's not there. And sometimes we outgrow each other. People are always in a space of where you feel that you have to rectify it and you have to stay there. Sometimes it doesn't have to be. There's a space and a time for everything. What do they call it? A season, a reason, a lifetime, and accept what is. And you can love from a distance. You don't have to force something that's no longer working. That's Absolutely. Also being true to yourself, I believe, because so many women, they almost beat themselves up and they stay where they at for the wrong reason. If it no longer works and you've tried to resolve it and you've been on the counseling and you've been to the relationship coaching and it's not working, accept it with pure love and move on.
Absolutely. We use a process called conscious uncoupling. And it's a process where you let each other go with love and light and grace and accept that you've reached the end of your road. You've shared some amazing things together. You've created some beautiful memories that you can treasure and take away with you. But rather let each other go with love and light and grace than turn it into a toxic, volatile, ugly situation where you just, cause more hurt and pain and trauma. So, I think, Maddie, where can people find you if they want to get hold of you and if they want to hear about the Bold Woman?
They can go to our social media platforms. On Instagram, we are Bold Woman and Women with an E, as in lots of women, Bold Woman _SA. On Facebook, we are Bold Women. And then we also have a landing page, which is www.boldwoman.co.za. And we have an event coming up, which is on the 22nd of January here in Johannesburg. So yes, women, please, we only have a few spaces left. We keep it very intimate. It's roundtable conversations. It's nothing but your truth. It is a safe space, and all the topics that we've been speaking about now come up, where we discuss them and we share them and we share our stories. It's a fun full day. It's a full day starting at 9 and ending at 5. And then we have one coming up in Zimbabwe, which is on the 29th. I'm so excited because I'm just a girl from Bulawayo. So if any Zimbabweans are in the house or listening in, we will be there on the 29th of January. So that's where we can be found, and we look forward to engaging with all the women out there, those that are listening and those that are still to be listening when you post this.
That's awesome. And for those that want to get in touch with me, I'm also on all the social media platforms. You can find me on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, LinkedIn, so Paula Quinsee. And my last event for the year is coming up on Sunday, the 12th of December. I'm doing my half-day Building Relationships workshop from 9:30 to 1 p.m. and it's applicable to singles and couples. If you want to learn more about how your upbringing has shaped and influenced you and how that's playing out in your adult relationships now, that would be the one to come and attend. And then in January, end of Jan, beginning of Feb, I kick off with my new groups of my Mancave program for men and my Womenology program for women. But please do reach out to either one of us. We'd love to answer your questions. We'd love to be there to support you. And we look forward to sharing this space with you soon.
Oh, that's fantastic. Awesome. The one thing that I just didn't say was the one-on-ones. I find a lot of people, if you can't come to the Bold Woman event, I am doing one-on-ones. So you can still reach us at info@theboldwoman.co.za, and we do one-on-ones, whether it's via Zoom or whether it's live.
Fantastic. And I look forward to our next one-on-one.
Oh, absolutely. I'm always inspired by those. So thank you, Paulie. I love this conversation and look forward to catching up soon.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day. Bye.
Bye.